So, hello everyone. So, let's look into why letting people go because they are low performers, where performance is based on a bell curve distribution, is essentially a paradox where you are at the end of the day not really increasing performance. So, let's just say that success in a company is a function of engagement. Okay. And so an engagement here means like people really love to work here and they recommend this workplace as a great place to work and they're really into it and they into driving the success. And let's just say that engagement is essentially a function of like, let's just say a percentage of your head count which is highly engaged. Okay. Now let's keep this in the back of our heads. Now let comes the bell curve. It looks like this, okay, and the CEO wants to split people into a distribution where you say, okay, me 10% low performers, 40%, and then 40%, and then 10% being really high performers. Okay, so essentially there's a performance ranking of 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, the depending from company to company, the distribution might work a bit differently. Let's just say now, if the company decides to say, okay, because we have a pay for performance culture and we want to drive performers, so let's just eliminate all the low performers. So if our initial headcount was X, okay, now after letting go of these 10% of low performers, the new headcount becomes 90% of that X. So the new bell curve that actually looks like is this. It's like somewhere like this, where you have again 40%, 40%, and now 10%. So your 90% of the headcount is remaining now. Now let's just say that over a year you backfilled those roles if they got backfilled. Not all roles are likely to be get filled, but for the sake of argument, let's just assume that. So what we have then is our head count essentially has become the original head count plus some new joiners. Okay, let's just call them n. Now again comes the distribution curve. Now year forward, again a performance review cycle has come, and before we draw the next bell curve, let's just plot some people here, actual people. So maybe there's a person here, 1, 2, 3, and maybe there's a person here, 4, 5, 6, and maybe there's a person here, 7, 8, 9, and some new people maybe have joined, so just say 10, 11, 12. Okay, now again we force fit them into curve because we want to essentially really put some people in this category, and then in this category, and then in this category, and then this category. Now some of these folks last year were probably in the top 10% or at the mid or below mid, but not low. So the new 10%, which is going to be of the low performers, is going to be some combination of these folks from here and some combination of new joiners. So if we look at it mathematically, what we are really looking for is this section here. Let's just call it low performers. So this low performers is essentially a 10% of the original head count plus new joiners. So let me just, now depending on how, let's just say maybe we had some percentage of old folks and or some percentage of new folks that ended up in this low category. So A times this and B times this. Now what happens if you have so what happens, let's focus on A. If you had a lot more people A, if A continues to increase in the low performer category, so you're looking at your tenure of your org, this is going to decrease over time because these are the old folks that have been with the company for a longer period of time. Okay. And what happens when B continues to increase, which is the percentage of your low performers that are coming from new joiners? Well, then again, in both cases, headcount will reduce. So no need to plot a trend for that. But in this particular case, you're looking at additional stress, manager workload that is going to increase over time. So engagement is going to reduce over time. It's going to happen with A as well, but with B, because of the additional workload and everything, and then workload on recruiters and everything, is going to have another crisis. So when you force fit into it, so again, this 10% maybe consists of 2, this guy is 7, maybe this new guy 11, right? So maybe some of the top performers from the last cycle and some of the new joiners and from the mid performers actually end up in the low category. So what's happened now to our headcount after the second performance review cycle? Again, the curve is now in this situation, 40%, 40%, 10%. But now see here, this part here, because we are removing 10% every single time, so head count 1 is X, head count 2 is 0.9 of X, head count 3 is 0.9 of 0.9 of X. So essentially over time what you're doing is you have this fixed polynomial here, 0.9 times the number of performance review cycles, let's just call it I, and your original head count. Okay. Now, is this the argument that I'm trying to make mathematically here is this the right strategy to be used to drive performance? Because all of this is now linked back to our original equation, which was, okay, success in the company is a function of engagement, and we assumed engagement to be people who are really committed to the work, who are going out of their way, and they recommend this place as a great place to work, and they see themselves working here for a long time. If success is a function of engagement, and engagement is a function of the percentage of people of the headcount which is highly engaged, and that headcount is going to essentially decrease over time, because everybody knows that next year they could be in that 10% of category who is going to get fired. The only way you can counteract that piece is by hiring more and more people. So remember this equation where you have the new joiners coming in. Your new joiners need to be greater than, your new joiners need to be actually greater than the people that you fired. Okay, so that's the only way you are going to achieve success. So all this is trying to prove one point from my end is, if we purely look at it from obviously there are a lot of assumptions that are made here to make these equations quite neat and simple, with a lot less variables in place. But if we could do a study of this over time, we would essentially prove that number one, force fitting does not work, especially it does not work when force fitting is being done to fire the 10%, the lowest category of the performers. Because using that logic, every cycle there will be 10% happening, and you will continue to have more and more new joiners. And a result of that is as the number of cycles or of performance review cycles are increasing, your your tenure is decreasing over time. You're probably hiring younger staff and things like that, and all of this is resulting in loss in, so with time your intellectual knowledge institutional knowledge is decreasing over time. So this is my mathematical argument. Thank you.